Great Journey is a place where you come if you're interested in making games, and you find someone and then you make games. That's it.
The Great Journey is a community.
The community.
A community.
We've got people who's been here for many years, and we've had people like joining the last couple of weeks, and everybody's equally important because the people is what makes the gaming community.
The Great Journey is a forum where people can meet and to explore an ecosystem of game development, to find like-minded people and create games.
Hanging out at the Great Journey is always kind of an unexpected experience because there's no one scheduled to be there at any time, so you don't really know who you're gonna meet there, or you don't know what you're gonna learn. So there's a lot of creativity, and you can just be yourself.
This is a place where I can meet people that are exactly as nerdy as I am, and a place where I can sit and make games.
Doesn't matter who you are or what you come from, as long as you have a vision of creating something good with some people, you can do it.
It's opened its arms, it's welcomed me into its cult.
To make new connections, meaningful connections. Develop my skills and help other people develop their own skills.
This has given me the opportunity to develop, but also to learn about others' focus on their specific area of interest.
Some people are making music, some people are writing stories.
Programmers, artists. It's a place where I can share my knowledge and get knowledge in return, and together we can grow to become the best game developers that we can.
And everybody wants to improve, and everyone is willing to help. I think that's what unites the Great Journey.
The core really is collaborating, meeting up with new people to create something new.
Just our thirst for knowledge and our passion for video games brings us all together.
If you're interested in learning or developing as a game creator, the Great Journey is always welcome for you to come by and have fun.
So we are live. Great. Welcome everyone to Lunch Talk. So I think this is the first one we have today, this season, this spring, and also like the first time of summer. So Lunch Talk is a bi-weekly event by The Great Journey where we invite the industry to talk about their experience and share their knowledge with us and the community. My name is Rosanna, and I am the community and communication manager here at The Great Journey. And I will kind of like be the host here. If you have any questions, you can either write them in the YouTube chat or in our Discord server in the channel Lunch Talk Updates. And we will ask Mikael, my colleague, who's gonna present soon, questions at the end of talk. But if you are interested in more events, like for example Friday Stories or other Lunch Talks events we have, you can visit our website. We have all the events there, and you can also subscribe to our calendar if you want. But on to the Lunch Talk. So today we have Mikael here, Mikael Forslund, which is my colleague and also our studio manager here at The Great Journey. And what are you going to talk about today, Mikael?
Thank you, Rosanna. Today I'm going to talk about I have a game idea. What do I do now? So let's get started. And thanks for the presentation. I'm the studio manager here at The Great Journey, and if you have a game idea, here is the place to develop it. So if you have a game idea, what do you do? So the thing is, everybody has ideas and everybody can come up with a game idea, and your first idea is probably not your best idea. Your goal is to create a good idea and build it even better and turn it into something that you can actually play. And once you have a playable game prototype, you can then start to play test your game. Test, was the idea, was it fun? Did it work out the way you thought it would be? A lot of times an idea is hard to know if it's fun or not before you test it. You can also then show the game to other people. Start talking about your game and let them test your game prototype and get valuable feedback. In many cases, it's really valuable to have other players test your game and get their opinion on what they think works and what does not work. And it's also an easy way to find new team members, showing that you can create something playable, attracts more team members if that is your goal, and creating a playable prototype shows that you can start to create something and more people will be interested in your prototype. Maybe even get your first fans. There are a ton of games releasing every day almost, and starting to build up your fan base is a good way to start to reach out. And of course you can also start to pitch your game idea once you have something playable. Make something playable. Your goal is to make something playable as soon as possible, even if it's super basic. If this is your first game, then the goal should be to finish the game, so keep it simple and keep it simple. It's easy to start a project, it's easier to start a game project, but it's much harder to finish it. It's really hard to finish it, and that is one of the big challenges everyone faces once you start working on a game ID. And probably your scope is too big. It's probably too big. You need to make it smaller. What is the core of your game? How can you scope your game ID and start working on a minimal viable project, also called MVP? What does the game really need to have? Scale everything down that is unnecessary to be able to create a prototype as soon as possible. Skip everything that's unnecessary or fancy that doesn't needs to be in a prototype. And as I said, it's easy to start working on a game ID and have a too big scope. So if you do that when you're working really hard in a game, and after a long time you worked so much, you spent so much time, and the result is only a small fraction of the game. Maybe it's just a few percent, let's say it's 5%, and you spent weeks, even months creating a game that the idea was too big from the start. It then looks too overwhelming, resulting in you quitting and having a bad feeling about your game ID, and maybe even a bad feeling about making games overall. So it's better to start small, and if you still love your game ID and features, add features once you have a playable prototype that is fun. And let's not forget, making games takes time. It's really easy to create a 2D character and make it move left and right. However, really fine-tune the gameplay mechanics that we see in Mario games, for example, takes a lot of time, and it's one of the things that make Mario games so loved. It's easy to underestimate the time it takes to polish the small things in a game that really makes it feel great. And another good tip is to build as modular as possible. Build bits and pieces, repeat, edit and reuse objects, gameplay mechanics, code, textures, whatever you can make up. Take a look at some of your inspiring games. Take a look at their credit list. You'll see a bunch of people, at least maybe 50 or even 100 or a few hundred people, depending on what your inspiring games are. So how can you save time? By building modular and reusing as much as you possibly can. And also, your game will never have perfect code and never have perfect graphics. So set up your own goals. What is good enough to make something playable, fun, good looking, but still not perfect? Because you don't have all the time in the world. Your game ID. Before starting to build a prototype, take a second look at your ID. Look at your own strengths and weaknesses. Look at the scope. Research similar games. What makes them look good, what makes them be fun to play, and so on. And also, I'll also talk about a recipe for successful IDs. What my thoughts on that. So, is your game idea unique? If your idea is just a low budget game of something that's already exists, then you need to change your idea so that it offers something new. Research similar games, read the reviews from other players, from writers, and do your research. What makes them popular? What features is really popular? What's fun in them? What do people really enjoy? Not just your own personal opinion, but look at what other people say. And make your own idea stand out from the similar games and offer something new and or even a new twist. Look at what are your strengths. If you're really good at creating 2D pixel art, or do you know how to make super optimized code really fast? Build your own game idea around your own strengths. Learn what you need so that you can easily say, I know I can build this game. Before you start, you should have a good idea on how to make it. And for the things you don't know, there are tons of tutorials on anything you can ever imagine on how to make things. And also, don't forget to ask people for help. Start small and keep it simple. If you're a game artist, limit your game idea and use a game template of any kind and design your game so you only have to code a minimal amount. And focus the game around the nice look and feel, on what you are good at and on your strengths. And if you're not good at art at all, but maybe you're great at coding, there are a lot of games made by people who's not into creating super detailed art. Minecraft, for example, is the most obvious example in this case, but there are tons of other examples as well. Get inspired. What inspired your game idea? Take a second look and look at movies, games, artwork, books, whatever you want to be inspired by. Look at the reviews of the games that inspire you, what the reviews say, what made the games good. You can also look at what rules their games have, and set your own rules for your game. Rules make it easier for you to create something within a boundary, and it's a good way to start detailing out your game idea. Here is my recipe for a successful game. And of course, a successful game can have many variables to why it's successful. It could be timing, it could be luck, really hard work, skills, knowledge, and so on. But here are my 4 criteria that many games have. Number 1, it's familiar. It looks familiar. It reminds the player about something. Think as a childhood nerd, maybe reminds them about their favorite movie or game, or maybe a feeling of how nice it is to be in a wonderful nature setting, whatever it is. It's something familiar with something. But it's also unique. It adds something to the player that the player has not seen before. A twist, a style, or mood, a setting, etc. Something that really makes the game stand out from the crowd, which is really important since there are so many games being released. It should also be easy to remember. The player remembers the unique game. Maybe it's the gameplay mechanics, the hand-drawn graphics, maybe it's story, maybe it's everything combined. It's also really important that there is a market gap. Is there a gap in the market for this game at this moment? If there is a very popular genre, it's hard to stand out if it's already been released 20 games in a genre that's popular this year. It probably will be less successful. So, next step, how do you build a prototype? And how can you make a prototype faster? There are a lot of ways to create a prototype. Here is some example, mostly based on Unity, but of course there's also Unreal or other engines. I'm just taking up Unity as an example here. Unity has a lot of templates. They have their own micro games and also visual script called Bolt templates where you can start to get the playable prototype up and running. There's also other assets like the adventure creator if you're creating an adventure game, point and click and so on. You have the core G2 engine with a lot of scripts, so you don't have to code all that movement from the start. You can also start making paper prototype, anything that you can come up with that would validate your game ID. So take a look and take a look and see if there's an engine or a template that could be perfect match for your game ID. Here are some images example. Here's the core engine, the Unity microgame, in this case the FPS microgame, and we also have the adventure creator and so on. There is a lot of templates and a lot of ways to reach your goal to make a playable prototype faster. So what assets can help your ID turn into a prototype? Don't forget there is a lot of affordable assets that sometimes can really help to get the project going to the next level for a minimal budget. But big note, and if you're using assets, make sure to change them to your own style and to personalize it. It's never fun to look at a game and say, oh, it's that and that assets. So a good example of that, how you can create something in your style, is check out the first tree. It's a good example of using a lot of assets and tools, but still has made its own personalized look and feel. And here's a tip, and it's to look at, if you're interested in this game, take a look at the GDC talk. No time, no budget, no problem. Finishing the first tree. And if you still have no clue what I'm doing and you feel stuck, maybe there's a feature you really need. Ask for help. Game dev communities are often very helpful. And also, since we are here at the Great Journey, don't miss out to join our Discord and ask for help in our Discord service. Needless to say, building a game on your own can be really challenging. Look for someone to collaborate with you and that can help out and strengthen your weak spots. So, why should you make a prototype? You can validate your game loop and you can get feedback early from testers. Here is an image right now from Nintendo showing a quick prototype that was made for Zelda Breath of the Wild, where they tested the idea of the open wild setting, the open world setting. So everyone's doing prototypes. It's a really good way to just quickly test and validate your game ID. You will also fail fast. If your idea sounded great but was not fun, making a prototype will get you to failing faster. And after you tested it, should you continue working on a prototype or scrap the idea? And also, don't forget, your first idea is probably not your best idea. And as we mentioned, we talked about core game loops that you can test in your prototype. Here are some game loop examples. Maybe you build troops, you battle, collect coins and experience, and unlock new troops. Maybe you just explore the area, you find new items, and you unlock new areas. Or maybe you play a level, you get a chest, complete a quest, unlock a new chapter, but at the same time you also get experience and upgrade your character. So, another thing to really consider is to consider what are your goals. Is it to release your first indie game? Should you build a vertical slice with all the features? Or do you want to start up a company? Or maybe everything? Start to set your own goals and work on reaching those goals. Set up a timeline and milestones, and even if you fail a milestone, you will still learn a lot. And find the tools and workflow that you need for your project. And always think of ways to reach your goals faster. And once you have some goals set, you can then start to break down all the things in the game, such as how many levels should it be, what kind of enemies, how should you create the enemies faster, and so on. You can break down into interaction, the art, the features, the gameplay features, the music and the sound effects, and so on. You will get a long list of all the assets you need, and it would be a great start to a high pitch game document. You don't have to do a game document, but at least do a high pitch game document to just briefly mention and think over all the things that you have to have in a game, and also look at what you really need to have in a game, what is critical for the game to be the game that you want, and what can you wait to add. You can also start to fill in the Great Journey deck template that's on our website soon, at least. We'll put it up. It's also one way of more an overarching overview look of your game and your game ID. And let's end this speak with something from Master Yoda, who said, do or do not, there is no try, but focus on the do. Just do, start creating something and see where it ends up. And that's it for today. We did not really talk about marketing and reach out. We mentioned it briefly. It should be something you really need to consider if your goal is to start making your own company, or you want to release a game, how to reach out. But that's probably another lunch talk just about that topic, since it's quite big. And that's it for me today. So feel free to ask any questions. If you're on the Discord, post a question there, or on YouTube as well.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
There's a lot of stuff in there in the
Yes.
talk. I think one of the first questions we got is actually, it feels like there's a lot of things I need to consider making a game.
Yes. So it is, and it also depends on what your goal is. If your goal is just to learn and just how to get something playable as soon as possible, just do like Yoda and do something. Don't overthink it. But if you really want to start to make a living out of games, you need to consider everything to be as lucky as you can. Because luck needs also preparation and a lot of thoughts behind that.
You also talked a little bit about like trending genres, for example.
Yes.
We could see, like, in the past couple of years, for example, Battle Royale has been really big. And there's been a lot of games released into the Battle Royale genre. If you are looking into making a game that are in the genre that is popular right now, what is it you need to think about to make you stand out in that kind of sense?
You really need to add something new that no one has really done before, and you need to be quite obvious about what it is, so it doesn't look like a copy at the first glance, I would say. I wouldn't recommend copying a trend, maybe. You could, if you really have something unique to add. It could be visuals, but also gameplay. But also really consider how big those teams are. Since we are mostly focused on small indie games.
Yeah.
In this, so consider looking at your favorite games, create list, and just, is it possible? Probably not. How would you make them? How would you make it so that it works for your team with a small amount of resources that you have?
You also talked a little bit about, you mentioned MVP.
Yes.
What is that exactly, if we talk? Because that kind of have something to do with what we talked about in the question earlier.
And I also kind of was into it on the, when you're writing down all the assets you need to have, what is the minimal viable project? Let's say if you want to make a car, you wouldn't start making a really great tire, you would instead start to make a skateboard that you can actually take yourself from point A to point B, which is what the car would do as well. However, it also has an engine, 4 seats, and a roof, and a lot of other car things. So a skateboard would still take you to from point A to point B, but it's very simple. In the simplest manner. Could also be a bike, depending on what you're building.
That is great, because we're talking a lot about this. Then we're talking about like how do we start small? Like you talk about scope and you talk about how to scope things. What if you start doing something and start showing it to people and they don't really think it's fun? You think it's super fun, but the people who have looked at it, is it possible to show it to the wrong people in that kind of sense?
It could be. It could be like, I'm making this horror game. You show it to people who don't like being scared. That's not the right feedback you want. You need to take the feedback into consideration, depending on what your target group is. So let's say you're making a horror game, find people who like that kind of genre and knows the genre bit and can add more valuable feedback. So that could be an issue.
That is true. Yeah. Like it's also like you need to be like some things that we're talking about here is that you need to show things, you need to reach out, you need to ask for help when you need help. Yeah. And it's a lot about like bravery, like showing what you are doing, which a lot of people think is really awkward and scary.
Yeah, it's maybe a lot of people don't see themselves as like some people. They are not used to it, and they just need to, not just, but maybe look at what is my goal. My goal is to be successful in the game developer. Maybe you need to start working on that and start talking about it in small steps, and with every step you get to your goal a bit further. So it could be tough, but also maybe you're looking for another team member who could do that more easily if you're not really into that. That would strengthen your weaknesses.
That's true, because building a team is really important.
Yes.
It's like you can of course make a game on your own, as you said. Like for example, the guy who made Stardew Valley made it by himself, but it took him 5 years to do it.
You really have to love the game idea. You really have to be super dedicated, and just continue working. You still have a full-time job. You do it on weekends and evenings, and just never stop and just continue to learn. You have to be super motivated about your game. You could do it. It's really hard. Some people do it, but maybe they've been working a few years before that to get some more experience from product development or even game industry.
But if I want to start like my own, I want to create my own game, and I don't feel particularly like interested in programming, for example, because a programmer, usually think of them like kind of the backbone of a team. Like they are usually people who make things actually work in the game.
Yeah.
What do you do if I'm not super interested? How do I find someone who's interested in programming that can help me?
One way, there's like 2 ways. Either way, you find someone, a programmer, maybe you join our Discord and so on. Maybe you reach out to your friends and see who they know and so on. With networking, you can also join other online communities and so on. You can also shape your ID to a tool or template that you find and kind of do work around. You can still release a product even though it's a bit tricky and you probably get stuck sometimes because you don't. And you can also learn like the basics of some programming and just do some scripting and not write the entire thing on your own. I would say, yeah.
So networking is also important.
Yes, the game industry is a lot about networking and talking about who you are. It's very un-Swedish way. Talk about yourself and your skills and just be the first people to be on top of your mind whenever if you want to make it into the game industry, or just start doing things that you like, and just to get noticed.
So, for example, you mentioned that you can join our server. We have a lot of people on the server that are game developers, that are doing like in different stages of starting studios or creating game concepts or games. So there's like one bubble. Where else can we find people? For example, we have events here that can be a good networking opportunity. But now when we are in, like for example, now when we are recording this, it's still raging COVID. It's hard to meet people at, like for example, ESGS or Swedish Game Arena and Award.
Yes. So in some cases, those awards are still online. You can still look it up. I guess it depends. I think most of them are somehow online. Sweden Game Arena had an online event a few months ago, and so on. So it's of course really more difficult to network and just find. That's why you need to start show off your game and your ideas to make people notice you. And maybe look at what events, digital events, can you attend? Where can I upload my prototype to pitch and so on? And maybe join a game jam. We have game jams here at the Great Journey. That's one way. There's other game jams in other game communities as well. That could be a good way to just deep dive into game development.
Great. I'm looking to see. We have someone actually writing a question in Discord, so I was like waiting for that question to come up while we're speaking. So we talked about popular genres. We talked about finding people. We talked about MVP. One question could be like, when can I call myself a game developer? That is like it's a really two-edged question in that kind of sense.
I guess it depends on your motivation. If you are a game developer who wants to release games, or you want to work with games, I guess you could call yourself that. Eventually you will be it. Then it will become true if you just say it out loud enough times in this sort of way. But you also have to work, of course, really hard on reaching that goal and releasing maybe a few prototypes and so on.
So I can literally, if I want to start calling myself, if I have started to work on my game idea, I can be a game developer.
I guess you could say.
Yeah. So let's see here. We have some more coming in. We talked about game developers. We talked about, I can't program. Can I still make a game? You can. If I need help, what do I do? The question in Discord stopped, so it's not there anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think we have. If you guys have any more questions, just post them and we can continue to discuss it.
Absolutely. And the next thing here from the Great Journey is that we will have you can apply to the internship. Still available here at the Great Journey this spring. If you're on the indie game developer course, you can apply to our internship. So if you want to reach out to me or Rosanna and just talk about your game ID, get some feedback and just how to get going, or if you're stuck or whatever it could be, just reach out to us here at the Great Journey.
I can also say we have a really good help section in our Discord. The people used to post literally like, I want this to happen in code.
Yeah.
And then someone is there just writing everything like, this is how you do it. So I want to, if you are interested in games and creating games in general, and you don't really know what to do this coming fall, for example, we work together with Changemaker Future Games and have 2 courses here. One who is indie game developer specifically, and if COVID lets us, we're gonna sit in the same room to do that, because we actually share our office with the classroom.
Yes.
and it's really empty right now.
It is. So if you want to start making your games, have a look at that. There's more info on our site, thegreatjourney.se.
Yeah. It's our news site also.
Yeah,
like
it's
published
new
just
and
a couple of
updated,
weeks
yeah.
ago.
It's really nice.
We have here a question from Discord, from Ronald.
Yeah.
A while ago you talked about picking a good game engine for your game to save time. How can you find a game engine that suits your needs?
Well, you have to look at your own strengths and the game's... What is the game? What's the core of the game? How can you make something fit your game ID as easy as possible? There is some assets, now I'm talking about Unity Asset Store, but those are Unreal. I think they're kind of equal in many senses. Break down your game and look at what features would be really nice to have, so I don't have to make it on my own. And look at assets, what people who have used those assets or engines in maybe similar cases, and reach out to them if it's possible. As I said, the game dev community is often very friendly.
Very open.
And open, it's like, yeah.
We had that, for example, happen at our pitch event 2 or 3 weeks ago, where we have someone who pitched a game which was a point and click.
Yeah.
And then one of our indie studios actually were listening in the pitch and like, you should try this tool, this is what we use, because we are also doing a point and click. So it can also be like reaching out into the community saying, I want to do a point and click, I want to do a text-based game, I want to do a visual novel, for example, and someone knows something. So
yes,
we also got a really good tip from Casper in Discord. It's in knowledge sharing. We talked about networking earlier, and he put a tip on Gaming Industry 101 from Medium. It's an article, The Power of Networking, and I think it would probably be a good read. I haven't read it yet, but it's probably going to be a good read.
Yes, sounds interesting. Nice. So, Ronald, I think we answered your question, sort of. And if you just want more one-on-one feedback, just reach out if you still feel unsure.
Yeah.
And for those people who have applied to the internship here at Great Journey, we can also look at, we have some licenses from some of the common assets for Unity, like we have the point-and-click adventure game creator, some licenses that are floating that we can share and so on. So you can always talk to us about those tools.
That sounds great. We don't have any more questions right now, and I think we are almost at the time. So I think we can actually end it here today.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks
Great.
everyone for listening.
Yeah.
And just reach out to us if you need any help.
Any help, yeah. That's why we are here. So, as Michael said, thank you everyone. If you're interested in more events like this, just join our website or join our Discord. We have actually updated the calendar with the next Lunch Talk, so check it out. I'm not going to spoil it here though. So, thank you. Have a great Thursday. And if you are still interested and still in the Discord, we actually have a meetup today at 5, so you're super welcome to. Great.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye bye.